On this edition of the RO Sports Show, Joey Bennett's going to be in studio to take a look at the Major League Baseball trading deadline, who the winners and who the losers are. We're also going to be taking a look at remaining NFL free agents as we get closer and closer to the regular season, as well as some NFL superstars that are coming off of injuries. In addition to that, NASCAR, we've got plenty to talk about with Russell. We're also going to be taking a preview look at the Big Ten Conference, as well as Love It or Hate It, Big Impact, the Ross Poll, and much, much more. The RO Sports Show's on deck right now. Good evening and welcome to the RO Sports Show, as always brought to you by First Health Orthopedics. I'm your host, Matt Harrelson, and with us starting out on the show, Joey Bennett, our MLB analyst for the RO Sports Show. So we appreciate you joining us tonight again. So of course, the Major League trade deadline ended on Tuesday. Now this is always a big time of the year for Major League Baseball. We see a lot of guys move. Seems like this year we saw more than usual, right?
A lot of trades. No real, what I would call blockbuster trades. Not a huge move, but a lot of middle of the road, a lot of high to mid players move. Just a ton of trades overall.
Well, I do want to mention this. A guy that's moved, I think since last time you were on the show, was Manny Machado. Mm-hmm. And that was, at least in my opinion, the big name out there when it came to the trade deadline. Of course, we saw him go to the Los Angeles Dodgers for, I think it was 5 minor leaguers. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I asked you this last time, but the Dodgers was actually the team that I picked to win the World Series before the season started. That's looking more and more like it could be a good pick. And we'll get to all that here in a minute. But since you and I are both Braves fans, let's start in Atlanta. So the first trade that they made was for Johnny Venters from Tampa Bay, who, of course, if you're a Braves fan, remember, used to play for the Braves. So he will be coming out of the pen. Another guy that they traded for is Orioles reliever Brad Brach. So let me start with this. That's 2 guys coming out of the pen. Do you think the bullpen, in my opinion, has been their shortcoming? What do you think?
Absolutely. That was, if we were going to focus anywhere, if I'm GM, that's where we focus.
Yeah, and I think that these 2 guys will be able to come out of the pen, relieve some of the guys that we've had in there. I know Vizcaino, the closer, has been hurt. Could you see Brach actually coming in and becoming the closer? Because in my opinion, Vizcaino has been hit or miss.
Very possibly. It'll a lot of things, I guess, will depend on his return, when it is, how quick it is, how quick he's back up to speed. The manager seems to be very much closer by committee, so to speak.
Right.
So it's anybody's guess, and a lot of things have to kind of play in. But I do like both of them coming in from, as I heard one analyst say, coming in from teams where they didn't have a chance to win, coming to a team that has a good chance to win. Maybe a different environment, maybe a different fortune for them.
And being a Braves fan, it's been rough the last few seasons. I think it's fair to say that. So when they started out hot this year, and the Nationals being kind of middle of the road, at least almost 2/3 of the season in, actually 2/3 of the season in, we're battling with Philly. But right now, I think that the Braves needed to strike while the iron was hot.
Yeah, needed to do something.
Yeah, and I think that they did that. So these were the first couple moves. Then they go out and they get Adam Duvall, an outfielder from the Cincinnati Reds, who hits for a low average. I think he's hitting around 202, something like that. But he's already got 15 home runs and 64 RBIs. So this is a guy that I've been told, and correct me if I'm wrong, is going to platoon in the outfield with Acuna and Inciarte. Is that right?
I'm hearing mainly, or from what I've heard mainly, is from for Inciarte. Inciarte is probably one of my favorite players on the Braves right now. Just seems like a likable guy, but he's been struggling at the plate. Great defense, not questioning his defense at all, but his bat's been struggling a little bit. So I really can't blame him. I hate to see it for him personally, but a couple of days, the day after they announced the trade, he comes out and goes 4 for 5.
Right.
So
maybe they need to put a little pressure on
there
him.
You go. Maybe you just need a little pressure.
And then, to finish it up, Brian Snitker, the manager of the Braves, came out and said that, when he and Anthopoulos were talking, the GM of the Braves, that Alex hit all of the numbers, all of the bases that they needed to hit. Relief pitching, an outfielder or somebody off the bench with a bat, and then finally a starting pitcher, which they got in Kevin Gausman, again from the Baltimore Orioles. Now, Darren O'Day was thrown in there. He's another reliever. We're not going to be able to have him this year because he had a hamstring issue?
I believe it was hamstring that's got him out for hamstring surgery.
Right, so he won't be playing with us, but we have him locked down until 2019, I believe. In the meantime, Gausman, the starting pitcher, he's locked down until 2020. This is a kid that, when I say kid because he's younger than me, but a kid who I don't really think has met his potential in Baltimore. But do you think maybe just a change of scenery would do it good?
Very possibly could be. I hadn't seen too much about him. He was one of the trades that I hadn't looked into very much, but definitely interesting to see, again, different environment, winning environment. You go from a team that hadn't won a total of 40 games yet, and you've gone to a team that just is barely over 40 losses.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting, a change of environment there, see what happens. I was very surprised. I thought they may do something with the Zuber Cabrera. I thought he may be the short end of the stick, and then Tehran's been struggling a little bit, so I thought he may be trade bait. And they've been calling up guys. There's a lot of young pitchers that have made their major league debuts this year as starting pitchers. So it's been kind of interesting to see what all they are, what they're doing, and what the end of the season might look like. But absolutely, I agree. It feels like they touched on everything that they needed. All the big items were kind of checked off.
Now, before we move on, as far as the Braves, they're still young. Now, they did make some moves, but they're right there with the Philadelphia Phillies. Do you think after these moves, the Braves have a shot at the East?
The Phillies did a really good job, too. They were a lot of the analysts are calling them winners in the trade deadline, too. So it's going to be a shootout. It'll probably come down to somebody getting injured. Depending on which team stays healthiest, may end up winning the division or may be down to the last day. So I think we closed with Philly, so it'd be – I don't want to be sweating it out on the last day, but that would be kind of exciting.
I'm just happy that we're even in a position
to talk about it.
Round, so.
I'm just glad we were sellers.
Absolutely. So moving on and looking at the rest of the league, are there any other trades that stood out to you?
I really will have to applaud the Orioles. They did exactly what they needed to do. One article I read said they traded 6 guys and got 15 prospects. That does not hurt your farm system.
Right.
This year is done. Done.
Yeah. This year was done in the first 2 weeks.
Next year may be done, but this gives them some hope for the future or some trade bait for the future. So I think I cannot see them losing from this. I think this trade deadline period will probably be one that kind of stands out in their future for a good while. The Dodgers, of course, did a good thing. They were great already and got a little bit better. That's those are two that jump out at me automatically, I guess.
Yeah, and if we were going to pick winners and losers, which we're getting ready to do, I would pick the Dodgers as being a winner, not only for the Machado trade, but then they went and got Brian Dozier, the second baseman from Minnesota, who just a couple years ago hit 50 home runs and is perennially a second-half player. So I would imagine, as stacked as the Dodgers are, they're one of these select teams like the Yankees, like the Cubs, that have not only money, but they also have a deep farm system where they can bring these guys in and then extend them, which is not fair necessarily to the rest of the league. But nonetheless, I think that was a good trade for them. Again, any other winners you got?
No, those were two of the ones that stand out. There's a lot of, with so many trades, you never, well, with any trade, but especially with there being so many trades this year, it's going to take a few weeks, going to take a month or so for everything to kind of solidify and say, okay, these guys are legitimately what they needed to trade for. These guys are legitimately not what they needed to trade for, or they're not faring well in their new city.
One that a trade that I found intriguing, and I'm not giving it a win or a loss grade, is the Pirates trading for Chris Archer. Now, I know the Pirates are hovering just above 500, I believe, and in the wild card, they're still they're right there at the 4 or 5 games out. The thing that I found odd about it was just a year ago you trade your ace Garrett Cole to the Astros and then turn around and trade for another ace. I don't understand that.
They must see something coming. That was one of the articles that I've even got here called Chris Archer the loser in this. Not the team, but Chris Archer, because you were going from one subpar team to potentially another subpar team. Maybe they've got a little something cooking. I'm not sure how long his deal is. Do you know how long he?
I want to say he's under contract until 2021. And I say only, but I think it's only going to cost him about 10 or 11 million over the next couple of years, which in this day and age is nothing.
Chris Archer was one of those names that I had to look up his picture to remember who he was. Right. It's just because he's been with Tampa Bay. Time I saw him, I recognized that I'd seen some plays and seen some highlights from him. But it was kind of interesting to see cellar dwellers trade, but maybe the Pirates think they've got something coming down the road that'll help them a little bit. Like you said, if he wasn't very expensive, it's probably a pretty good move.
Yeah. And two of the guys that they gave away back to Tampa Bay, one was Austin Meadows, who is at one time Pittsburgh's like number one prospect, center fielder. He's kind of dropped off. Another guy was Tyler Glasnow, a right-handed pitcher that they had at the top of their system. Both of those guys have kind of dropped off. So I'm wondering if Tampa Bay may have gotten fleeced a little bit in this.
It could have been, or I mean, there could have been some. The Pirates may have been looking at some clubhouse issues or something going on behind the scenes that they didn't know about, or that nobody else knew about, and they decided some guys needed to change the scenery, or they just needed a bullpen, or needed a clubhouse morale booster, and somebody to say, the team needs to say, hey, they're serious about us actually being able to win here. Let's go and win.
Now, taking a look at some other teams, are there any players specifically or any teams that you would say missed the ball, so to speak?
I was really, really surprised the Nationals didn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
I was not expecting Bryce Harper to be traded.
No.
I think that would have been the worst thing in the world they could have done, or a very bad thing to do. But I was really expecting that front office would have been all in. Let's go see what we can do. This is an opportunity for us. I really think now is the Nationals' opportunity. They've had a really good team for the last couple of years. Everybody has picked them for the playoffs and for the World Series for a Braves fan, what seems like for an eternity. But I really was surprised that they did as little as they did. Like I said, not saying they should have traded Bryce Harper. I don't think that would have been the right move. But I figured they would do something to try and solidify something, or again, at least say to the players, hey, we believe in you guys. We did this. Go out and get us a championship.
Yeah, matter of fact, not only did they not really make any moves, but they traded away one of their bullpen guys, Kinsler. Which the Nationals is one of those teams, and I agree. I think they should have done something and gone for it, because it's looking more and more like they're not going to be able to keep Harper after this year. So
I just can't quite figure out. Maybe they know something we don't.
A couple teams on the West Coast, or at least in the western side of the league, that I found didn't really do much. One was the Rockies, who are pretty much have the same record, I think, as the Braves, and they're right there in the West and in the wild card spot. Now, over this past offseason, they spent like $150 million just on bullpen pieces. And then come to find out their bullpen, at least stats-wise, is like second worst in the league. So that kind of backfired on them, and that may have had something to do with their GM not making any moves. But again, I think if you're a team that's right there in the hunt, you need to at least do something, and they did nothing.
I'm hoping they may have something going on waivers or something like that. Or maybe they've said, hey, we're not going to be able to catch Machado and the Dodgers, and just not saying that, but saying that.
Another team, and I hate to say this, but is the Oakland Athletics, who are killing it right now, and they're like 20 games over 500. Unfortunately, they play in the same division as Houston and Seattle, so they're in third place. But they went and picked up Familia, Yuri's Familia from New York Mets, the closer, but then that was it, and they did that a couple weeks ago. So I would have liked to seen them go out and make a couple moves. But again, when Billy Beane's in charge, he's very frugal when it comes to the moves that he makes.
He knows exactly what he wants to do, and he's going to do it. So.
Yeah. And one other team that I thought just really killed it was the Brewers. And I think the Brewers are going to be a team to be reckoned with. I know they're in the same division as the Cubs, and the Cubs picked up Cole Hamels, but Cole, I think, is on the very back end of his career. But they picked up Mike Moustakas, the Brewers did. A move that I kind of wish the Braves would have done.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been bad.
But nonetheless, I think the Brewers picking up Christian Yelich over the offseason, getting Lorenzo Cain over the offseason, now picking up Moustakas, and they got a couple other guys already there that are going to kill it.
Well, everybody's saying that with what they did over the trade deadline, the defense is going to prove the good or the bad with moving Shoup to short and playing Shaw at second. Good pickup, just really didn't make. That may have been we'll get him so somebody else doesn't kind of move, or maybe they've got something down the road that Shaw's looking at, but or maybe they have somebody in the farm system that's ready to come up to play another infield spot. But just a little bit of a head scratcher in their defense, and I think it'll be something that it'll either prove to be the smartest idea in the world or the worst idea in the world in the next month or so.
Well, usually what you find is it comes down to pitching.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
We'll have to wait a couple months as we get closer to October and see who's going to be there. Now, speaking of that, before we run out of time here, After now that we're done with the trade deadline, of course, there are some guys that could still get moved in August if they pass through waivers. Adrian Beltre is a name I'm going to throw out there for the Braves. Could I possibly end up in Atlanta? But
absolutely.
Besides that, looking towards the playoffs, who do you think is in the driver's seat right now?
I really like the Brewers in the Central. Really like the Dodgers in the West. I guess I need to pull for the Braves.
Right.
In the East. Take a quarter and flip it about the Dodgers and the Red Sox and the Yankees, but a lot of teams kind of differentiating themselves and making some good moves here at the deadline.
Well, I was looking at the AL standings, and right now it's pretty much set. It's going to be some combination, like you said, of Boston and New York in the East. Yeah. Whichever one doesn't win, that's going to be the wild card. You're going to have Cleveland, who's already ran away with everybody else in that division's under 500. And then Houston's probably going to win the West, and then it's going to be either Seattle or the Oakland A's to get that second spot. After that, it's done, it seems like. Yeah. Taking a look at the National League, though, it's obviously a lot more clustered. I like the Cubs now to win the Central, although I think that one's going to come down to it. Milwaukee and the Cubs, one of those is going to win, one is going to get a wild card. I don't know. There's so many teams, because Philly's there, the Braves are there. You've got 3 teams in Colorado and Arizona and LA in the West. So it'll be interesting to see.
Have this conversation once a month, and it probably would rotate a little bit because there's so many teams right there in the thick of it.
I'll just say this. Before this season started, right here on the sports show, we made predictions on who we thought would win, and I had the Dodgers beating the Astros. Same 2 teams, except different outcome. Yeah. So I'm stick with that.
Okay. Okay. Not a bad prediction. Not a bad prediction.
All right. Well, Joe, we appreciate you joining us here on the RO Sports Show. And when we come back, we're going to take a look at the NFL. There's a lot of remaining free agents and a lot of names that you'll recognize, as well as some returning NFL stars coming back from injury. We're going to take a look at those, see where they'll end up. All that and more when we come back to the RO Sports Show.
At Richmond Community College, we can prepare you for a high-skill, high-paying career in a variety of fields. From business to education, engineering, utilities, healthcare, criminal justice, information technology, and human services. At Richmond Community College, we can save you thousands of dollars on tuition through our university transfer programs that provide a seamless transition to universities and colleges throughout North Carolina. At Richmond Community College, we are always developing new courses and programs in response to the communities we serve. We offer day, evening, and online courses, and you can now complete 5 curriculum programs entirely online. At Richmond Community College, we believe in helping you prepare for a better life. Richmond Community College. Local college, big impact.
Just try asking one thing. It don't have to be complicated.
I don't even know. All I know is Harry Potter and Hermione. Dumbledore.
Who's the third friend? Out of the 3 of them.
The redhead.
Yeah.
Ron.
Yeah, there you go.
Is it Ron?
Yeah, Ron Weasley.
Weasley.
Yeah.
Exit Realty Platinum in Rockingham has listed one of the most beautiful homes in Richmond County. Located in Rockingham on Ledbetter Lake, the home features 4 bedrooms with bamboo floors and a kitchen featuring stainless steel appliances and granite countertops, and a master bedroom that overlooks Ledbetter Lake, along with a spacious tile shower and the attached master bathroom. The open living space leads to the back deck with a perfect view of Ledbetter Lake, and the property features its own boat dock. Want to see this beautiful home? Call Nicole Hayden with Exit Realty Platinum, your source for homes in Richmond and Moore counties.
My name is Jim Leach, and we have been using the Tim Hayden Construction Company for the last several years.
My name is Dave Owens and my wife Beth. We had some damage here at our place in Knollwood Village.
January 2nd, our house flooded upstairs coming through to the first floor.
Tim has responded very quickly with his team of people.
Our repairs went extremely well.
Tim made a very difficult situation much easier for us.
And welcome back to the RO Sports Show, brought to you by First Health Orthopedics. Joining me on the desk are the Ross Russells, Jeremy McKenzie to my right, Russell Parker on the other end. Guys, let's hit the gridiron. Talk about the NFL. Some remaining big-time names as far as free agents are still out there, which surprised me. First, of course, on the list is Dez Bryant, the former Cowboys wide receiver. So, there's been some talk about maybe the Cleveland Browns taking a look at him. But what I want to do with you guys was run through some of these names Maybe talk about why they're still out there, and also talk about where we think they might end up. So let's start with Dez. Where do you think? First of all, why do you think he's still out there? Because he's a pretty big wide receiver.
You can't take what he can do on the field and what the contribution he did for the Cowboys, but let's be real about this. He was a hothead in the past couple of seasons with the Cowboys, with Prescott, and some of the, problems in the locker room as well, with create tensions with Tony Romo, in which, it causes his release. And pretty much his attitude, I think his attitude had played a part in it, and I think because of his personality pretty much hurting him right now. And I know Baltimore took a look at him, and they gave him a nice-sized contract, but he turned it down. Yeah. As of right now, Cleveland's looking at him, but, the question is, unless it's something due to injury, I think that's when they'll take a chance on him. Even Antonio Brown from the Pittsburgh Steelers recruiting Dez Bryant to come to his team.
Yeah. Russell, let me ask you this. Let's say that Dez goes to Cleveland. They went 0-16 last year, so they got nowhere to go but up. And, of course, they brought in a lot of other free agents this year. Do you think Dez can maybe put them over the top? That'd give him a big number one receiver.
Yeah, I think they can at least get a 6 record out of it, at least 6 wins out of the season, having him on the team. He's got the talent. It's just can he cooperate with other players? I mean, not too good when he was at the Cowboys, so I have to see how he does that elsewhere.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of T.O. a little bit.
Yeah, it does.
But you mentioned that Antonio Brown has been recruiting him. Let's say he goes to the Steelers. That puts the Steelers over the top, too, doesn't it? Because you add him with Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster, and he's your third, maybe, or your second. I mean, that's a pretty big...
Yeah, and then you got Le'Veon Bell running the rock. That's pretty much putting your offense up the notch where they could contend for a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think Big Ben would be having to think twice about retiring if you add Dez to it. So where do you think he ends up?
I think it's going to come a scenario where he might be in Cleveland.
All right.
I'm going to say Cleveland, too.
I think Antonio Brown's going to be able to do enough to persuade him to come. Now, is Dez going to be getting the money that he's probably wanting? Probably not, especially at this point, because like you said, Baltimore's already offered him a sizable contract. For some reason, he turned that down. I don't really know why, but nonetheless, either one, obviously, if you want to win at this point, even with all the people that Cleveland picked up, you still want to go to Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah, contend for a ring.
Exactly. And I think at this point in his career, because Dez is starting to get up there a little bit.
Yeah, he's 30 years old.
Yeah, it's time for him to start putting money aside and start thinking about trying to win a championship. Up next is Eric Reed, a safety who was with the San Francisco 49ers. And the reason I had this name on here is, whether people want to admit it or not, I'm pretty sure why I know he's on this list. This is one of the guys that came out last year with Kaepernick. And was one of the guys that was kneeling for the national anthem. Now, he's actually got a grievance against the NFL and the owners that they're colluding against him, and that's why he's a free agent. Just real quick, what do you think of him? Is that why he's out there still?
I think that's the reason why he has not have a job right now in the NFL, because due to the protesters, whether you like it or not, he took a stand for what was right, but which has cost him his job. And see, right now, due to what he has done, he is very rare. You can't find a job nowhere.
Yeah.
So I see a scenario where if you can't get a job at NFL, so you got to think other possibilities like with the CFL or play overseas.
Russell, let me ask you. I mean, Eric Reed's only like 26, 27, which in the NFL, especially for a safety, that's still relatively young. Do you agree that does he have a case that the owners are kind of holding out against him?
Yeah, I think it's I get that he's put his political beliefs out there and everything, and taking his time and taking advantage of work to be able to do what he feels necessary. So, with that being said, I still think it's wrong that they're not going to pick up somebody who's got that talent. And if all about winning championships, that's what these teams want to do. You need to find the people who can do that for you. So, I think it's not that big of a deal. Go out there and pick them up and let them play.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know exactly where he'd end up. I'm sure there's a lot of teams out there. We could probably name a dozen teams that would need an Eric Reed type player. Hopefully he'll be able to pick up a deal. I'd hate to see somebody of his caliber end up having to play for Canada. Not that there's anything wrong with that necessarily, but let's face it, that is not the same as the NFL. Yeah. Up next is a guy who is not 26. He's been in the league for a while. Is Antonio Gates, who of course has been part of the Chargers family since I think his first year. First ballot Hall of Famer, in my opinion. I think most people would agree with that. He says he wants to keep playing though, but he's still a free agent. So the main suspect here.
Yes, his age is His age is one, and then right now what I told was the Chargers type tight end right now. Hunter Henry is placed on the Pope list right now, so you might want to pick up the phone and call your boy like, hey, Antonio, Hunter has gotten hurt. You need to come back to the Chargers, give us one more year. And production wise, it speaks for itself.
Yeah. What do you think, Russell? I mean, Antonio Gates is always, like you said, has always been productive, even the last couple of years as he's gotten older. Phillip Rivers is not, but just maybe a year or two younger than Gates, their quarterback. So why wouldn't you go out and try to get Gates back?
I mean, he's got he's got that veteran experience, and when age comes experience. So I think having that on the team is going to help out tremendously. So that's what I would go for him.
And then moving on, another guy who is a wide receiver type is Eric Decker, who was with the Titans last year. I think he's played for a couple of teams, maybe
Denver. He played for Denver and
New Jets, I think. Maybe.
Yes.
Now, there's been talk that he and New England have been talking. Now, first off, does Eric Decker fits in perfectly in New England, doesn't he?
Yes, because he played under Josh McDaniels during his time as head coach of the Denver Broncos, and I see a scenario where Decker could come in as probably a number 2 or number 3 receiver, because right now you need a receiver because of Brandon Cook's gone to the Rams, and they're in trade talk for Malcolm Mitchell. So I can see a scenario where Decker could come in and play that number 2 receiver, and also give Tom Brady another security blanket as well for first downs. And at the same point, veteran leadership in the locker room. And
Decker kind of fits that Wes Welker, Amendola, Edelman type to me. Where he could be like a slot receiver kind of guy, come in and pick you up a yard here or there. What do you think, Russell? I mean, is this another guy that could be like a security blanket for Tom Brady, who's now 40 on the verge of 41? Isn't that something he needs?
Yeah, I think eventually he's going to need it, but I think the Patriots can hold out for another year or two for Tom Brady, not have to worry about that yet.
Yeah, well, look, it seems like no matter what the Patriots do, they always seem to pull out 11 or 12 wins every year, so whether they pick up Decker or not, but he's still hanging out there. As is another wide receiver, Jeremy Maclin, who at one point, in my opinion, was one of the top receivers out there. Of course, he was with Baltimore last year. They haven't re-signed him. Now, obviously, they went and looked at Dez. So, obviously, Dez would have replaced him. But what's up with Maclin? Where's he going?
Right now, looking from the sources from ESPN, an old team called the Philadelphia Eagles looking at him right now. Want to see if he interested in bringing him back. But try to look at this. Getting older, production might have slipped in the past couple of years, and can he bring that same persona that he was with Philly the first time? Because right now you got to give Carson Wentz some kind of receivers right now with Sean Jeffrey, Nelson Aguilar, and also they just picked up Mike Wallace. So you add another veteran like Jeremy Maclin can come in and play that number 3 or 4 receiver, and also give Carson Wentz plenty more weapons.
Yeah, I agree. And like you mentioned, I know Alshon Jeffrey's actually coming off of an injury.
Yeah.
So Maclin, again, might be one of those, low ceiling guys, so to speak, that's not going to cost you much, but could come in and have a 1,000-yard season. He did it not too long ago with the Chiefs. So
yes.
A couple more guys here is tight end Julius Thomas, who I don't know if you guys remember when he came on the scene with the Denver Broncos. His first game, he had like an enormous amount of yards. Immediately, everybody started picking him up on fantasy. He hasn't really capitalized on that since then. He's jumped around. He signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars. This past season, he was with Miami. Has he dropped off? Is that why he's still out there?
I think it's going to be a scenario with Julius Thomas. Once upon a time, he was one of the top tight ends in the league when he finished with a team high 12 touchdowns. I could see a scenario where he could come in like a team like Green Bay. Green Bay or somebody like pretty much a team like Buffalo Bills. Somebody can a quarterback needs a security blanket in the tight end position. And I can see a scenario where you need that red zone threat to come in and just, you don't have to throw Julius have a 100-yard game. Just throw him a couple of touchdowns to him. Yeah, that help your team out a whole lot better.
Yeah. Now, when Julius Thomas was with Denver, the quarterback throwing to him was Peyton Manning.
Yes.
So that makes a difference. Do you think Thomas was that good, Russell, or you think he was just because Peyton Manning was throwing to him?
Yeah, Peyton Manning was throwing to him, but I mean, I think you can line up any other quarterback. I think he still do well, but not that great, not as good as Peyton Manning was doing to him.
Now, the last name on this list of remaining free agencies, as far as notable ones, is Alfred Morris, who, as a Redskins fan, I wish we still had.
Bye.
He ends up going to the nemesis, the Dallas Cowboys, who, of course, Ezekiel Elliott's there, and he's obviously the number one guy. But Alfred Morris is still a guy that can get you 1,000 yards, right?
Yeah, he's still in the prime of his career. Why? I'm still trying to figure out why the Redskins get rid of him, but he took a little bit of money go to Dallas, thought he was going to be the number one guy in Dallas, which that didn't pan out for him. And right now for Alfred Morris, who probably could still have enough juice in the tank to be a number one guy, or right now be a number two guy. I think it's going to be a scenario for Alfred Morris, who can probably still give you 1,000 yards if willing, but it's going to be where an injury has to take place for somebody to pick him up.
You're probably right. We see that all the time when it comes to running backs. All right, now speaking of injuries, let's look at some big names that are coming back from injuries. And let's start with what might be the number one guy, because he missed all of last year after surgery, and they kept just putting it off, is the Indianapolis Colts quarterback, Andrew Luck. So, when he came up, obviously he was like the next big thing. Some people were comparing him to Peyton Manning, of course, because he played for the Colts. He's coming back from shoulder surgery. Like I mentioned just a second ago, he missed all of last year.
Yes.
What's I don't even know what the question is to ask. I mean, do we expect to see him this year? What's his ceiling for this season?
I think Andrew Luck right now, he missed all last season with a torn ligament in his right shoulder, his throwing shoulder pretty much. He got a lot left to prove within himself. He just had to want it. And then right now, the weapons he got around him with T.Y. Hilton leading the way, the question is, can he be that same Andrew Luck we had in the past couple of years ago?
Yeah.
Can he be that same all-pro quarterback? Because there's a percentage very high that once you tore your right throwing shoulder, chances are you're not going to be that great like he once was.
Yeah. And Andrew Luck is not old, but he's not young either.
No, he's in the prime of his career at 27, 28 years old. So he got a lot left in the tank. And see, offensive line is going to be an issue to protect him with Jack Miltmore just retired today, and they just picked up Quentin Nelson in the draft. So we just got the question mark is going to be the offensive line, and then can they block to protect him from injury that he has suffered, and also can I see a Colts have effective running game, and also T.Y. Hilton leading the way in the receiving corps.
What do you think, Russell? I mean, is Andrew Luck ever going to be as good as he was when he came up?
I don't think so. I think once you have that surgery, it's just gonna.
It's gonna take a while.
Yeah, and I don't think we'll see him this year. It might be later in the year, but even then, when you think about later in the year, when you're trying to go for that playoff bid, I don't think you're going to see him then. So he might be out for this entire year, and we might see him again next year.
Well, I think right now, for a long time, the Colts were the cream of the crop in the AFC South, but not so much anymore. And a guy that I'm getting ready to mention that I think is going to have a lot to do with that is also coming off of an injury is Deshaun Watson, quarterback for the Houston Texans. Now, I was a huge Watson fan, even though I wasn't necessarily a Clemson fan, but I love this guy. When Houston drafted him, I thought, man, like 11 other teams just really messed up and passed on this guy. I think he went 12th overall a couple years ago. But what do you think? What's Watson's ceiling?
You know what? I truly believe last season in 6 games alone, Deshaun Watson was off the chain, and everybody thought that the Houston Texans during that time was going to be the threat to beat the New England Patriots, get to the Super Bowl. And after the Deshaun Watson injury, I think the team just pretty much faltered, and I think right now this is going to be his resurrection, where Houston going to be a team to beat. And especially with Will Fuller coming back from injury, DeAndre Hopkins coming, and that defense is so second to none, I can see Houston is going to be a threat in the AFC.
Now, obviously, Watson played at Clemson. Hopkins also was a wide receiver at Clemson. That dynamic is going to help him out, isn't it?
Yes. And that 1-2 combination was terrific in those 6 games.
Just in that small sample size, absolutely. And then just a couple other names real quick before we move on. Odell Beckham Jr., who we mentioned before as having some contract issues, but he's also having some health issues. Is he going to be healthy this year? What do you think about that?
I think coming from ankle surgery, I think this is where Odell Beckham will be back, be as ODB with the one-handed catches. I know that when he went down, I think the offense went down, especially with Eli Manning was missing him so badly to the point where he was throwing more picks than touchdowns, but I can see Eli. I said, Eli finna get his buddy back. So this is where Eli's gonna pretty much gonna let up some numbers up this year.
And Odell's got something to prove this year, right, Russell? I mean, he's got. We're talking about the contract issues. He wants a big contract. Coming off an injury, he's got a lot to prove this year, right?
Yeah, he does. I mean, you can't just ask for a whole bunch of money, and owner will have to be worried about that investment because he's got an injured player, a former injured player on his hands. What's he going to do about that? So ODB is going to have a lot to do.
All right, and then last name here before we go. Dalvin Cook, running back for the Minnesota Vikings, got hurt. I think it was a leg injury last year. ACL. So obviously that knocked him out. It didn't matter though. Minnesota still had a great year, made it all the way to the NFC Championship. Is he the missing link to the Minnesota getting a Super Bowl?
Yeah, I think he was the missing link, but I could see the scenario where Dalvin Cook could come back from the ACL. Him and Latavius Murray could hit that 1-2 punch and take some pressure off of Kirk Cousins, who's coming in from the Redskins. Really, it looks like Minnesota really ain't did much or nothing. They can still do what they do. Dalvin Cook comes back. Hey, we can see. Let's watch Minnesota if I go to the Super Bowl.
All right, real quick, Russell, you agree with me? Is he the missing link?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But if you're a Green Bay fan, look out because Minnesota Vikings might be taking over the NFC North for a while.
Yes.
Of course, Aaron Rodgers will have something to say about
Yeah, there you go.
But that's going to do it for the NFL talk. We're going to take another quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to be looking at NASCAR with Russell. Plenty to talk about there. And then also, moving along throughout the country, looking at college football, we're going to take a look at a preview for the upcoming Big Ten season. So all that and more, we come back to the RO Sports Show.
McNair Auto Sales is the place to buy your pre-owned car, truck, or van. To be the best, it takes big selection, friendly staff, and great pricing. We guarantee a no-hassle buying experience, and financing is available right on site. So come see us today. We're located at 1026 East Broad Avenue in Rockingham. And remember, with over 40 years of experience, you know McNair is the name you can trust.
Willow Tree Antiques and Gifts is all about rustic home decor and gifts. You will always find a variety of unique antiques, vintage, and new items in our shop. Come and see our selection of housewarming, new baby, and wedding gifts. For the man in your life, we have many collectibles, Boker knives, and leather. And ladies love the jewelry, purses, candles, hats, and t-shirts. We also offer a 30-day layaway program. Come and experience shopping at Willow Tree Antiques and Gifts.
Hello, I'm Tammy Benson, and this is Nancy Bowling. And we're here to tell you about the wonderful service at hospice and what they have to bring, from the nursing services to the medical director, to in-home aides, to a chaplain, to bereavement, to everything you can imagine. They were there to take care of it.
I cannot think of how the experience with hospice could have been any better professionally, spiritually.
Welcome back to the RO Sports Show, brought to you by First Health Orthopedics. Let's hit the racetrack, Russell. So the guys were at Pocono this past weekend.
Yeah, we were at the Tree Triangle. Kyle Busch, Wes Price, one of the big three, wins it.
It's getting kind of boring, Russell.
Well, you know,
somebody else win a race.
Well, we just about had that because Daniel Suarez. Well, first of all, we had Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick. They both failed post-qualifying inspection prior to the race, so they had both starting in the back of the field. So watching them come up through the whole entire field was actually kind of fun to watch. But Daniel Suarez was awarded the pole, so he was eligible to. And he started from the front. He did such a good job that day, and I have to say hats off to him because you don't really see him run up front a whole lot, but he actually stayed around the top 10 the whole day. So he done really, really well, and shout out to him for finishing second place. He almost won the race too, to challenge Kyle Busch for the lead there in the final restart. And we also had a really bad wreck in that race too, which involved Bubba Wallace. Now, the Tree Triangle has a really sharp first turn, so his brakes went out in the race.
Was that the Indianapolis one?
Yeah, it was actually because the first straightaway of the race is such a long one that you build up a lot of speed. He was entering that turn at 200 miles per hour, and essentially he actually had to drive through the grass to slow himself down from hitting the wall, and was able to turn himself to keep from hitting it. So that's hard, but he hit it so hard that a chunk of the concrete behind the safety barrier was chipped off.
Huh.
But he walked away from it.
So you talk about the big three. Where'd the other two of the three end up?
Well, Truex finished outside the top 10. He did not have a good day. Kevin Harvick, he had an opportunity to win this race, but halfway through the race, he made contact on pit road with another driver, Eric Almirola, and that caused him to have a delay in his pit. So he started more in the back, so he had to fight harder than Kyle Busch did. But he's still rounding out top 5, so it's still a good day for him.
Now, I noticed that Kyle Busch won the race, but I'm also noticing some names that we haven't really talked about this year. Are some of these guys that you're going to get ready to mention, are they just like starting to maybe creep up on the big three?
They're kind of creeping up a little bit. I won't say that they're Chevrolet. There's a lot of Chevys in this top 10. I think there's about 5 of them, which is huge because Chevrolet's not been doing well at all this season. The highest one is Alex Bowman in 3rd, and William Byron 6th. And Chase Elliott 7th. So that's 4 of the Hendrick drive. 3 out of the 4 Hendrick drivers. Johnson finished, I think, around 12 or 13. So still a pretty good day for Hendrick and Chevrolet. Toyota had a great day as well. Ford wasn't up there as much. In fact, I think the only one out of the top 10 was Kevin Harvick. So Ford wasn't doing too well today.
So now let's take a look. Excuse me, at the point standings. So I'm guessing it's Busch, Harvick, Truex, some order like that.
Yeah. Only thing is that Busch has increased his lead on the other two. So Busch is now 58 points ahead of Harvick. So 5 races to go, it's looking like he might be the regular season champion.
All right. That part's boring. We already know those things are getting in. Let's take a look at the cut line down at the bottom, because that's where I think some of the fight you're seeing some of these guys still trying to get into the playoff before we get there.
Yeah, so Alex Bowman finishing 3rd like he did, it helped him out a lot, increased the lead that he has over Ricky Stenhouse, who's currently sitting just below it with 56 points difference. Now, I want to really specifically talk about the cutoff line because drivers like we don't usually see up front, they're getting more close to the front now. So guys like Bowman, Eric Jones, we already had him win a race.
Right.
But William Byron, those type of guys, some of them are eligible to win very soon. They could very well do it, especially at Watkins Glen coming up, where it could be almost anybody's game. But I could see a scenario where somebody below that cut line will win a race and it potentially knock out Alex Bowman and maybe even Jimmy Johnson. Who would have thought Johnson being outside the playoffs?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it could be a scenario where Jimmy Johnson could get in.
Yeah, he could very well win some of these upcoming races as well. Him and the Hendrick Motorsports crew, they're all like firing on all cylinders now. They're starting to really make ground up, and it could very well happen where Johnson wins a race, and then somebody like Paul Menard might be able to get him a win somewhere and knock Bowman out, or Stenhouse could win and get himself in.
All right. Well, now that that's behind us, let's take a look forward. So what's up next on the docket?
Well, we've got the Truck Series.
Oh, okay.
They actually have really announced a new sponsor. They have a new title sponsor coming in 2019. It's the first one that's changed in 10 years. Right now it's Camping World. Now it's going to be Gander Outdoors. So it's pretty big for them to have a new title sponsor. A lot of people don't really look at the Truck Series too much,
right.
But Camping World and have Craftsman, they've been very long sponsorships. So the Truck Series has always had a good feeling for sponsors. Xfinity looks like they're fine, but of course Cup Series is probably the only one that's really struggling to hold on to a sponsor. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how Truck Series does with a new sponsor, see what Gander can do and bring to the table.
Do you think that'll maybe bring a little influx of cash back into the scene?
Yeah, I mean Truck Series is actually kind of expanding. I believe that now the trucks are getting more cheaper to build, where they can have more races out of the season because they run a smaller schedule than Cup and Xfinity. Actually, Xfinity run a small schedule as well. But the trucks, they don't have as many races, probably about 20 something on the schedule. So versus 36 for NASCAR, or for Cup Series. So I think it's good things coming for the Truck Series. And Truck Series is a lot of fun to watch, as long as Kyle Busch and no Cup regulars are racing in it.
More Busch territory for him to take over.
He just tied the record with NASCAR Hall of Famer Ron Horn today for most wins in the Truck Series.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
All right. Well, then after that's over with, then where are the big boys headed to?
Well, we're going to go left and right and left and right. We're going to Watkins Glen International Raceway up in New York. So it's going to be at 3 o'clock on Sunday, 90 laps. It's going to be on NBC. And this is going to be a very demanding race for everybody involved because, most drivers are always used to going left. But we're going to, the first turn of the whole race is going to be to the right. And then you got a lot of S's up and you got the bus stop. You got a carousel. You've got this really skinny line that you guys go through where they have a lot of big wrecks at occasionally. Some cars even have axles torn apart from that area. It's a fun race. I actually love this road course between Sonoma and Watkins Glen. Let's see how the Roval does before I determine which was my favorite.
What's the chances anybody goes left in the beginning and wrecks?
Hopefully that's a 0% chance. I don't know what will happen. If they go straight, they'll hit a bunch of sand and some tire barriers. But another thing too is that the pit road is going to be opposite. They instead of pitting into the left side, they're going to be pitting into the right. So everything's reversed for the pit crew. So they all have to practice up and get ready for that because they're not used to jumping over the wall from that side. So it'll be interesting to watch that.
All right, and I guess the last question: who you got?
Well, funny you should ask because I have been 0-5 out of these 10 picks I've made. So I decided I'm going to do a reroll.
Okay.
And, now I've only kept one of them the same, but Watkins Glen, I had AJ Allmendinger. I did not think it is. After this little, we've been having a Truex, Busch, and Harvick type of deal. I think after seeing Busch and Harvick win their races, I think it's Truex this time. So I think he's going to win at Watkins Glen coming up. He also won at Sonoma earlier this year. I've got Michigan for Mark Truex was my previous pick, but now I've got Brad Keselowski winning at his home track. I think he can do well there. Bristol night race, I've got Kevin Harvick, was Kyle Busch. Now, of course, the last 3 races was Kyle Busch, but for next in Darlington, I got Denny Hamlin going back-to-back on that race, 2 in a row. In Indianapolis, I've got Kyle Busch still, so should be interesting to see how that turns out.
So, in a few races, are we going to do a 3-roll?
Might be.
Try again. Well, I tell you what, that's pretty bold to try to go, 10 races in advance because obviously anything can happen. So
see how 5 goes.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for the NASCAR portion, and we're going to move on and talk about the Big Ten. Now, as you know, we've been going through all of the different conferences. We started with the ACC a couple weeks ago, moved on to the SEC. This week, we're going to move north and look at the Big Ten. So we're going to put up on the screen a list of all the teams that are in the Big Ten and take a look at the West and the East. So, Jeremy, let's start with you. Coming out of the West, who you got?
I got Nebraska in the West, and also for the East, I hate to say this, the Buckeyes. It's Buckeye country.
All right. What about you, Russell? Who you got coming out?
Well, I'm going to agree with Jeremy on the East. I think Ohio State can do it. But I'm also going to say we're going to have a Big Ten rematch here with Wisconsin joining them in the Big Ten championship.
I agree that Nebraska could be one of those with Scott Frost coming in from UCF, but I still think it's Wisconsin's side to win there. Minnesota is the team, though, I think you should look out for. We'll talk about those in just a minute. But again, Ohio State, I think, is the team to beat out of the East. Of course, Penn State may have something to say about that, but with Saquon Barkley being gone, not so sure. Now, we've got our division winners, and we're going to look at who we think will win it here in just a minute. But moving on, who are any surprise teams or team that you might have? What about you, Russell?
I think that Iowa had a strong season last year. They outside the conference, they did very well. But I don't really know if they can get it done inside their conference. They've got a lot of tough competition there with Wisconsin, Northwestern. So Purdue, they probably get over. But I really think Iowa can be the guys to try and upset Wisconsin here.
All right, what about you, Jeremy? You got a surprise team?
Surprise team I see for the West is pretty much Iowa, and also for the East. Part of it, you always look at John Harbaugh. Always Michigan always got something to prove because you got to look at they finished 8-5 last season. The conference really wasn't, that conference record wasn't that good, but also you got some guys returning. And I'm pretty much sure that they can redeem themselves and pretty much can come back, even with the quarterback position, which all of them was under 55% of their passes, which that was terrible. But I think a strong season from Coach Harbaugh and the Wolverines, they can do pretty well.
I mentioned Minnesota a minute ago. Another team that I think could do well and surprise some people is Northwestern. Now, they had a running back last year. His name was Justin Jackson, who he ran for like 1,500 yards. Now, he's gone on to the NFL, so they're going to have to replace him. But Pat Fitzgerald's a really good coach there. So I'm not even going to try to pick one out of the East because it's basically like the top 4 teams there and then Rutgers, Maryland, and Indiana. So I don't really expect any of those 3 at the bottom to do well. Now, you got some players to watch for the Big Ten?
Well, for me, I've got Penn State's Miles Sanders, running back junior, and he's got a lot of Heisman hype around him, so I think he's going to be...
Well, he's got some big shoes to fill, too.
Yeah, he does, and I think he could probably give Ohio State a little run for their money. In fact, they might even be able to beat them. I know I've got Michigan probably beating Ohio State, but I think maybe they can even upset the Buckeyes there.
All right, what about you, Jeremy?
For Michigan, I got for players to watch from Michigan, I got Devin Bush, who is a linebacker for the Wolverines, which he finished up last year, 95 tackles and finished with 5.5 sacks. A guy who's a leader on that defense and possibly could be a good NFL prospect down the road. And I didn't get a chance to do anything for the West part.
All right, so looking at some players to watch, Rashawn Gary is a defensive tackle for Michigan, who was basically the number 1 recruit coming out of high school. Michigan got him. there's a good chance if he has a good season, he could end up being the number 1 draft pick next year. Of course, another guy that plays in Ohio State, Nick Bosa, who's Joey Bosa for the Chargers' brother, is another guy. Of course, people know about these two guys. I don't know that they would necessarily be surprises if they did well, but I think those are 2 players to watch. One other one is Penn State's quarterback, Trace McSorley. Now, as I just mentioned, Saquon Barkley went on to the Giants in the NFL, so it's going to be up to McSorley to carry on that offense because Penn State also lost a couple of wide receivers, lost a couple guys on defense, so they're basically not going to have to outscore people. I think he's got the arm to do that. I think we'll end up seeing McSorley later on in the NFL. Now, before we pick here, you mentioned Harbaugh in Michigan. It seems like he's had a lot of trouble when it comes to Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan State. So I'm just going to ask you guys straight up: is this Harbaugh's last year?
No, I don't think so. I think they'll have a pretty strong season this year. In fact, I think it'll be enough to where he can stay on for another year or 2.
Right?
I believe the same way.
I think they do. I'm not so sure he wants to stay, though. There's been talk that he could end up going back to the NFL, and because when he was with the 49ers, they went to the Super Bowl. It's not like he was terrible at his job.
And some people were just better at college, and some people were just better at NFL. Look at Nick Saban, who was terrible in NFL, but awesome at
and that's true. Although at the same time, Harbaugh also did well at Stanford. He had a lot of good teams there, so it's not like and he gets a lot of good recruits in Michigan. I just don't understand why he's not able to beat the teams that Michigan pays him to beat, which, let's face it, is Ohio State, Michigan State, and Penn State. So not quite sure what's going on there.
But even with Coach Harbaugh, I can see a scenario where he might surprisingly coach this last year at Michigan, and he might make an announcement during a press conference. I'm, leaving and going back to the NFL.
Yeah, and there's been talks that he could end up taking over the Chicago Bears. I've been hearing that for a year now, so we'll have to wait and see on that. All right, so we've got our picks. Russell, who you got coming out of the Big Ten?
I am going to go with Ohio State. I think, they're going to win it, and Wisconsin, they have a strong season, but they're just not going to pull it off again. So I think Ohio State will make it into the playoffs with this championship victory.
All right, let me ask you this before I let you go here. There's been some talks, unfortunately, about Urban Meyer potentially being fired over these sexual allegations that he supposedly knew about. It's kind of a Joe Paterno situation where did he know about it, did he not know about it? If he ends up having to resign, you still taking Ohio State?
Probably not, because Urban Meyer, despite what happened with that, he's still an awesome coach at what he's doing there. But without him being there, I'm not sure if people who's going to pick up what he's left down there. I don't think they can really put it all together correctly for them to make it. Maybe might not even make it into it.
All right. Well, let's just let's forget that though and assume that that Urban Meyer stays. Ohio State gets in to the CFP. Do they make it there?
I think so. Yeah.
All right. Who are you taking in the Big Ten, Jeremy?
Big Ten for the championship, it will be Ohio State.
All right. And does that winning the Big Ten? Does that get them in?
Yeah, they'll get them in.
Yeah, I'm probably going to have to take Ohio State too. I think it's Wisconsin's to lose on the West.
Yeah.
I think they'll be the best team there. I could even see a scenario where Wisconsin comes into the Big Ten championship with only maybe 1 or 2 losses. So I think Ohio State winning the East beats Wisconsin with only 1 or 2 losses. That floats them in.
Because you always look at Ohio State, probably one of your top 5 colleges in football programs in the nation, where you always going to expect them to be in the Final Four every year in the playoff system.
I think Ohio State, their only loss will be to Michigan. That's the reason why I think Jim might be able to stay up there because he gets that big victory.
Just to throw this out there, as of right now, Michigan State is 6th in the preseason polls. Michigan State.
Mm-hmm.
So
they have a strong team.
Let's not forget about Sparty. Dan Tony there is also a good coach. So next week we're going to move further south, take a look at the Big 12. So sure we're going to have a lot of Oklahoma picks perhaps next week, but we'll get into all that in 7 days. When we come back, we're going to finish out the show the same way we always do with our big impacts of the week. Take a look at the Ross poll and finish it up with Love It or Hate It. All that and more when we come back to the RS Sports Show. Welcome back to the RO Sports Show, as always brought to you by First Health Orthopedics. Guys, let's drum roll it here and finish it up like we always do with our big impacts of the week. There you go. Of course, Big Impacts brought to you by Richmond Community College, whose motto is Local College, Big Impact. Russell, let's start with you. Who you got for your big impact this week?
Well, we got a new Raider golf coach, Keith Parsons. He's going to be taking over for this season. Big impact there. He's going to take over to both boys and girls teams. So good luck to him in this fall and spring year.
Absolutely. All right, what about you, Jeremy? Who's your big impact?
Congratulations to the Richmond Senior High School varsity football team of getting their hands on a facelift for the stadium for the upcoming football season.
Yeah, by the way, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but the flowers on the side, they repainted some of it to make it Kelly gold or Kelly green instead of, I think they got it like forest green. So now it's more Raider green. So
I'm excited for
the great community service, young man.
Stadium looks great, and they're going to continue to pump more money in there. They put new goalposts in, so loving that. And then my big impact this week is former Richmond Senior High School linebacker Devin Hunt, who graduated back in 2016, has been named to the All-CIAA preseason football team as a member of the Shaw University Bears. Hunt led the team with 90 tackles as just a sophomore last year, so big impact, of course, for Shaw University. Now, moving on, taking a look at our Ross poll, which, by the way, we do every week. You can get in on the conversation by looking it up on the RO Sports Show's Facebook page using the hashtag Ross poll as well. And this week we had a baseball one. So we asked everybody, Rick Curdy, who is the founder of the Charlotte Bats organization, is working to get a Major League Baseball team in the city of Charlotte. Now, MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred has talked already about possibly expanding the league to include at least 2 more teams. Charlotte is on that list. So we asked everybody, could the Queen City sustain a Major League team? And yes or no made it real simple, and they said 100% bring on Major League Baseball. And I think, just me personally, I think Charlotte can have a Major League team.
Yeah,
right?
they can.
They got football, they got basketball, they got racing.
Yeah.
Why not baseball?
Yeah, and I mean, you've got BB&T Stadium, which is
and they got
right
a hockey
uptown.
team. And they got a hockey team.
Yeah, which is right uptown, and they built that. The Knights play there. They used to play in Fort Mills, which technically was in South Carolina, even though they were the Charlotte Knights. They moved it uptown. They built it with a possibility that they could perhaps expand it if need be. So right then and there, you've automatically got a stadium, uptown Charlotte, as they call it. I think it's a win-win for Charlotte and for Major League Baseball.
Would you trade in your Rays hat for a Charlotte Bats?
That's why I'm a Redskins fan and not a Panthers fan.
Bye, man. Have a nice day.
I was a Redskins fan before the Panthers existed. I couldn't turn on my team like that. Although I would go to a bunch of games. I'd rather. It's obviously easier to tie to Charlotte.
Because National League play Atlanta.
Exactly.
Go to Atlanta's game easier.
Absolutely.
And you can do both. You can do half and half.
I would definitely. You can't do half and half. I would definitely go to some games though, for sure. And then finally, guys, let's end it with love it or hate it. And we've got quite a few topics this evening. Let's start with the NBA. So the NBA recently signed a deal with MGM in Vegas, the casino, which makes MGM like a official sponsor of the NBA, and this makes the NBA the first major league sports league to do that. So signing with a Vegas franchise, love it or hate it?
Love it. Make more money.
All right.
Yeah, I love it.
I love it too. I mean, look, this stigma around Vegas and betting, that's over with now, especially now that sports betting is going to be allowed in state-by-state basis.
Yeah.
Make that money, like you said. Conor McGregor, speaking of making money, Conor McGregor avoids prison after a guilty plea of only disorderly conduct and only gets 5 days of community service. Love it or hate it?
I'm going to hate it.
Right.
Well, first of all, I'm not surprised that it's even happened, so I'm still going to say hate it.
I'm going to say hate it too, and it does surprise me. They didn't even revoke his visa, so he can still travel back and forth to Ireland.
Because Ireland will want to still make that money.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what it boils down to. He's got a good lawyer. They were able to knock off a few felony counts, so, I mean, it was literally just a slap on the wrist.
Yeah.
And you see this all the time. Because, we talked about this when it happened. I mean, a couple guys got sent to the hospital, and he put a barricade or something through a bus window. Like, that's dangerous.
Yeah.
I don't even think he got anger management. I think he might have to take a couple anger management classes, but still.
Yeah.
Moving on. Tennis player Andy Murray calls for the sport to have a more transparent drug testing. He thinks that they need to up the standards when it comes to drug testing in tennis. Love it or hate it?
I'm going to say love it.
Right?
Yeah, I'm going to say love it.
I agree. Anytime that... I don't necessarily think that steroids is really rampant in tennis, but it could be. I don't know.
About baseball players back in the day.
The harder you hit the tennis ball, the harder it is for the other guy or girl to return it. So perhaps
perhaps
they need to have more stringent drug testing in the tennis. Now, This one might get a debate going, but ESPN ranked their best college football team since the BCS started. And 1, 2, 3, they have the 2005 Vince Young Texas team, the 2008 Tim Tebow Florida team as 2, and the 2001 Miami team is number 3. Now I'm just going to talk about the order. Love it or hate the order?
I hate the order because I'm gonna tell you like this: the 2001 U should be number 1, then the Vince Young should be number 2, and then the number 3 should be Tim Tebow.
All right, what do you think?
I'm going to say I hate it too, and mainly because there's no Alabama in that top 5.
I'm going to hate it too. The reason I didn't bring up a specific name on that Miami team is because it was like 30 guys that went to the NFL off of that one team. They should be number 1.
All pros.
If you went through the list, I mean, it was just, name after name after name. Their top 3 running backs was Willis McGahee, Frank Gore, and one other guy that's in the NFL.
Oh Lord, it's on the tip of my tongue. And
and that's your 1, 2, 3.
And then you got Sean Taylor. Yeah, Sean Taylor leading the defense.
Yeah. So I mean, that team was just ridiculously stacked. And I'm curious. Look, all these are really good teams. Vince Young, he might have played in the best game ever played, perhaps in college football.
Yeah, he's probably the only player ever beat Southern Cal single-handedly.
But when you're talking about teams, I don't see how you can put that 0-1 team third. I just don't get it.
No.
So. Moving on. LeBron put on a dunk show in Vegas. Love it or hate it?
I love it, but I'm gonna hate it. I love what he did, but I'm gonna hate it, man. When you gonna participate in the dunk contest? I'm waiting on that day.
Thank you. Love it or hate it?
Just having a LeBron dunk contest.
I hate it. Dude, why haven't you done this in the NBA?
Yeah.
The whole talk when he first came up was, well, Michael did it. Well, all these other guys did it. Why won't LeBron do it? Well, he's afraid of getting hurt. Well, he'll do it here. What difference does it make, man? Do the dunk contest.
He's proven a point that his name can sell tickets. I think that's what it comes down to.
Well, of course he can sell tickets.
Yeah.
But I think he wants to prove that the other teams
at least do one, man.
Yeah, he could do one. He's been in the league now for 15 years. He could have done one 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's my beef with that. Anyway, Kanye West, old crazy Kanye, has revealed that he's going to be adding basketball shoes to his Yeezy sneaker line. Love it or hate it?
Kanye, are you serious, dude? Are you serious? I hate it.
I'm gonna say hate it. Can't beat Jordans.
Okay.
I'm gonna say hate it, I guess, because personally I really don't care. I just think it's funny that Kanye's trying to get into basketball. Although they are through Adidas, and obviously there's guys out there that wear Adidas basketball sneakers. They'll probably cost $350 though, so we'll see how far he gets with that. Speaking of basketball, Steph Curry, whose tennis shoes are not cheap either, is going to play in the Web.com Tour's Ellie Mae Classic on a sponsor exhibition. Now, the Web.com Tour is basically like their minor league. By the way, Steph Curry's a heck of a golfer, but him playing golf on this tournament, love it or hate it?
I love it. Hey, that might be a hobby you pick up after you retire from basketball.
Right.
One of my favorite things about golf is that they can allow anybody to play, and it can be having celebrities come in and play. I think they even had a celebrity tournament a couple of months back, and it was a lot of fun to watch that. Cause had Steph Curry, Larry DeCoe guy was in it, a bunch of different players. I'm gonna love it seeing celebrities playing golf.
I'm talking about sports celebrities at least. We saw Tony Romo. Not too recently, try to get into the U.S. Open. He's also a pretty good scratch golfer, as is John Smoltz, former Brave and Hall of Famer now, actually qualified for the Senior Open. So we see these guys, after they retire, get into golf. Steph's still playing, though. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say hate it just to play devil's advocate. Yeah. What if he gets hurt playing golf? Now, I know that's maybe not necessarily going to happen, but it could, right?
Yeah.
It could happen.
I mean, Tiger Woods got it from hitting the root, so.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you never know. That'd be my only beef with this is please don't get hurt. Although Golden State only has like 4 or 5 other All-Stars to replace him with. 2 more left here. So the Browns linebacker Christian Kirksey came out on ESPN and says that he expects his team to go from 0-16 last year to the playoffs this year. Love it or hate it?
I love it, Mr. Kirkley. That's your motivation to do it. Go for it.
I say love it too. You got to have a positive attitude coming in. I mean, trying to say you're not going to do that well is going to overall not be a good thing to say. So.
I agree. I love it. I mean, what's he supposed to say? Nah, we're going to suck again. Nobody wants to hear that, and that's not going to do your team any good. So I think just it sounds a little absurd because they didn't win a game at all last year, and then he expects them to basically win at least 10 games. Don't you think? At least 9 games is what it's going to take to get in the playoffs. I don't think it's going to happen, but what else do you want the guy to say? And then finally, sticking with the NFL, helmet contact rules are part of the reason why linebacker Roquan Smith is still holding out with the Chicago Bears. Of course, that was their number 1 pick out of University of Georgia. And just for anybody watching and listening doesn't know what this is, helmet contact rules is he's holding out because he doesn't want to lose any money for being suspended for helmet-to-helmet contacts when he's tackling guys. But love it or hate it.
I love it. That make your money. I love it because due to the fact he's being smart with it, and he just don't want to lose any money behind it.
Right.
Yeah, I love it.
I love it too because look, we've mentioned this before. When these defensive guys are going in to tackle a receiver or running back or quarterback, they teach these guys to lower their head because that's the first instinct for the defensive players to also lower his head. Next thing you know, you've got helmet on helmet. In college, that'll get you thrown out of the game.
Yep.
It can also get you thrown out if it's bad enough in the NFL. At least get you a penalty, get you fined. He doesn't want to lose any money. Sometimes it's warranted. A lot of times it's not. So I think he at least should fight for this and maybe try to work it out so that he doesn't lose any money. Because as we've mentioned plenty of times before, especially in the NFL with no guaranteed contract except Kirk Cousins, you got to get that money while you can. So
That part.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this edition of the All Rose Sports Show brought to you by First Health Orthopedics. So many ways to watch across Facebook, YouTube, the apps, the websites. So many to list, and of course, it's all free. So, for myself, Matt Harrelson, Jeremy McKenzie, Russell Parker, we'll see everybody right back here next Thursday, 5:30 p.m. Have a great week.